Hey everyone, this is Three Questions with Dr. Marcus Belin. I got music, man.
That's what's up.
I got the wrong button. All right, so you were saying, before we were talking, Dr. Belin has a podcast, and I'm going to be on it. Unless you disinvite me after this experience, maybe I'll get kicked out, right? So it's called the Unapologetic Leadership, and you are actually just recently got your doctorate? You just recently got this, correct?
Yeah, so I received my doctorate back in actually June of 2020. So during the bulk of the pandemic,
Yeah, nothing else to do, right? Just kind of sit around.
just write a dissertation right now.
Yeah, it's whatever. I'm not like trying to like deal with everything that's going on in the world. I'm like, I'll just do a dissertation. So it is awesome to connect with you and to have you on the podcast and talk leadership. And so I've been kind of following your stuff, seeing we have some like mutual connections. I'm so glad that you're on the podcast. And then right away we got the reciprocated. So make sure that you check out the Unapologetic Leadership Podcast. It's in the link down below. But I know that you inspire a lot of people. You're a principal currently in a very large school in Illinois. And so when you actually look back on your career and working with the incredible teachers that you have the opportunity to work with right now, who is a teacher that you think of that inspired you and why?
Man, so I will go back to actually elementary school. Miss Curtis, and she was one I could name several because there were several that invested in me in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Both that forced me to do things that I would
Right.
never do for myself. And Miss Curtis was able to talk with me fifth grade, man, to get me
Yeah.
a little bit out of the shell. Like at that point, I was halfway through elementary school, and it was like, all right, cool, a little more than half. But I was thinking I was the guy, right? I'm still quiet, very, not super engaged, but was able to find my voice and find the things that meant the most to me in education. And it was a turning point for me and kind of the middle school era, if you will, where I started to just determine the person I wanted to be.
Hmm.
It sounds crazy, like in
Right.
a fifth grade world, but it served its purpose. So I
Yeah. Like,
appreciate what she's done for me.
I actually think about, I think around, grade 7, I really identified the person that I didn't want to be. I'm like, that's like the worst person
Yep.
ever, right? I'm like, oh boy. So it is pretty rare that it is the opposite too. So you said Miss Curtis. So like
Yep.
what like do you remember anything specific? Like did you have like an opportunity in the classroom? Like how did you bring you out in that space?
I was slick, right? Like
Yeah.
I would try to do things just like right under the radars. Like I'm not a bad guy, I'm a rule follower, but man, I thought I was slick just trying to do things that wouldn't really follow the
Right.
rules. Or I talked a lot with friends, and like I would get in trouble for like little stuff. But man, it was just the thought of like I have so much to offer, and if I just kind of focused
Right.
the times in which I could talk or participate or engage with others, like if I can control that,
Yeah.
I could do so much more. And I didn't think about it in that sense. And I think about it now. I remember what the classroom looked like, how the desks were, and all it took was a few conversations with my parents, at parent
Right.
teacher conferences
Right.
for me to really like shape up. Like that was the only thing I really got in trouble for, was talking. And it really didn't blossom until fifth grade. And seventh grade, you're right, I realized like, I don't know if I want to be this person.
Yeah, right. Well,
So
that's all. And Miss Curtis just gives a little shout out there. So I love it.
yeah.
It's actually funny because I think, in your role as a principal, you probably deal with kids who are, probably a little bit like that too. And you
Hmm.
have an idea. I remember actually, we had a student who, was, like, actually when you said the word slick, he was the first kid I thought, but he used his slickness for evil. Like you could see it totally, right? And I remember actually he could like find a teacher, basically basically whatever insecurity they had
Hmm.
and actually like bring them to tears. And like he would do it with a smile on his face. Like it was like a really
Oh
weird thing, right?
no.
And I'll remember this. And he could just like dice you up with words, right? And I said, like, we like I had lots of conversation with him, and like it was basically like, you have a gift here, the ability to read people,
Mhm.
but you have to figure out how to use this for the right thing. Because is this
Yeah.
really how you want people walking out of here? Because I think for me, if you could harness that, just imagine if you did the opposite. If you could actually read
Mhm.
someone and actually lift them up. And he turned out to be like a really awesome kid, right? And I think it is sometimes seeing some of those things. I think when you talk about Miss Curtis, is like kind of sometimes seeing those things that, could be gifts that could be used in the wrong way, or else, helping harness that to find that, that superpower. So I do love that. And so you're currently a principal in a very large school, 3,000 kids, which, just to give you a reference, I grew up in a town of 5,000 people. So you basically have like a little town that you deal with, right? Which is
Yep.
right? So when you think of like all the, as a principal, when you think of the administrators in your career, maybe when you're a kid, who is someone that inspired you and why?
Again, I
Uh-oh.
say because it's such a long part. I'm like, I go through the list, man, but it was actually Scott Adrian, Dr. Scott Adrian. He actually just received his doctorate not too long ago. He was principal at Dunlap High School in Dunlap, Illinois, still is. And
Yep.
like that's just my guy. Like we connected. I was actually hired a month before he came
Right.
as an assistant principal, and so I was working with the superintendent, and then he came on board, and that was just a guy where I could be myself. I can learn because I needed to learn. Like as a fresh administrator, it was my first time really in public school. I grew up in private,
Right.
taught and became administrator at a charter school, and this was my first experience at a private or at a public school. And
Huh.
man, he gave me the sandbox to be able to play in, but he was able to pull me in and be like, all right, look, don't do that one again, but this is why, and would like teach me lessons. But it was never like, you did this, don't ever do this again. But it was like, man,
Right.
I'm just going to talk to you and help you figure it out. And
Yeah.
he left me to my own devices, which helped me to learn so much more about myself than I ever thought I could.
And that's like a really powerful thing, right? Because I
Mhm.
think that as educators, we also, administrators, we're still teaching, teachers, we're still teaching like the adults too, right? And we're still learning through that process. And uh, if we're in a space as educators where we expect people just to know everything right at the beginning, but we don't give them the same grace, it always kind of worries me about how we work with our students. So I love
Mhm.
that because I can think of, I'm the same as you. Like when I get asked these and I think about these questions, there's a bunch of people I could point to, and a lot of times, they they steered me in the right direction, but they did it with grace, right? Like they didn't do it where like I felt like crap. I think a lot of times if you can kind of tell when someone uh says stuff to you in a way to like lessen you as opposed to like lifting you up, right? And
Right.
I love that too. And so that's really powerful. So sorry, what was the name again? Is
Dr.
Dr.
Dr. Scott Adrian.
Dr. Scott Adrian. There you
Yeah.
go. Love it. All right. So last question is, so when you look at your career, you are principal for several years now in Illinois, but you go back to your first year teaching. And, as we just talked about, it's a constant learning experience. If you could go back and talk to, Marcus Belin, who's not a doctor at this point, right? If you could
Mhm.
talk to that person, what advice would you give him in your first year of teaching?
To try any and everything,
Hmm.
because as educators, what we fail to focus on are we don't look at a day as a day. We look at like, okay, we got a school year to be able to get through X, Y, and Z, but every
Yeah.
single day is an opportunity that has a limit. It has a defined end to it,
Mhm.
right? For me as a fifth and sixth grade social studies teacher, like, man, those kids are only going to be with me 520 days
Right.
before they graduate and go to high school,
Mhm.
right? But they're only going to be with me out of those 520 days for just 180. That's 180 opportunities that I have. And if I miss a day of
Right.
capitalizing on an opportunity, like that's just an opportunity gone. And so every day, even even being tired. Like I just posted a tweet just yesterday, I think, that says like, man, I'm tired.
Mhm.
And I know all the educators are tired, but we can't let that be an excuse to hinder our
Right,
ability to connect with young people and pour into them, because that day that we choose to take a day off could be
right.
a missed opportunity that we won't ever get back.
So this actually reminds me of a story, and I've shared this before when you were thinking about that, really just taking those days and thinking about Precious. There was this, it was actually a TikTok that I saw. I couldn't find it. It's gone in the TikTok universe, and the algorithm. But it was basically someone was talking and said, like, like, how old are your parents? Right. And they're like, 75. Well, how long do you think they'll live till? Well, hopefully at least another 15 years. And they're like, so how many times do you think you see them a year? Right. And they're like, once or twice. And they said, so think about this. You're going to see your parents maybe 30 more times in your lifetime. So when you put that in perspective, right? Like, how do you look at
Yeah,
that time? And it was like, oh, that is a powerful point, right? Because there's a big
yeah.
difference between looking as like, oh, I have 15 years with my parents, whereas opposed to like, I might see my parents 30 more times over their lifetime. And really kind of, that's the first thing I thought about that, and how like
Wow.
every interact I right is TikTok.
Like my mind blown right now.
TikTok's not just fun dances, right?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
so like that one hit me, and I thought about that too. So I love that advice, because even in the tough times, the days are precious. So I
Yep.
love it. I'm pumped to talk to you more, and for people to get to know you a little bit more. But hey, check out below, unapologetic leadership, and I hopefully will still get the invite to be on one day. So but
Absolutely.
check it out as well. But hey, thanks everyone for listening. Have a wonderful day. You gotta get one of these sound machines too, man.
Hey man, that's awesome.
Thanks, everyone.